Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlog, and this is City of Heroes. And we are playing the game on April 27th, 2026. We are just a day or two from the 22nd anniversary of the launch of City of Heroes, and we've got our 22nd anniversary badge. And if you remember, I mentioned, and somebody actually explained in the comments, whether you could get the anniversary badges with a character who hadn't existed in the past. You can. Apparently, if you go to Ouroboros or Echo Plaza, you can get these badges. I'm not going to bother with that on this character, but there we go. So today what we're going to do is we're going to get to 26th level and select our next power. And then we're going to probably finish or get close to finishing the Ubel Man story arc. And as we go, we're going to talk about the low-level game. Not just for City of Heroes, but for role-playing games in general, and kind of for all games. And how many players seem to have almost an allergy, a very strong dislike for the low-level game. And in Dungeons and Dragons, most game groups tend to start above first level, maybe third level, second level, fourth level. The Dungeon Dude said some groups even start at fifth level. I would never want to do that, and I've always asked to start at first level. I don't like starting at the higher levels. I love starting at first level, but a lot of players don't. And so let's talk about it. Why don't they? And why do I? And you guys can talk about it within your comments as well. I mean, we know, for instance, in City of Heroes that there are people who get a first level character, go straight to the architect, and level it up. Oops, wrong way. There are even people who will double box, right? So they'll log in with their laptop on the new character and their level 50 character on their desktop or what have you. And they will group the two characters, and then they'll sit the first level character at the entrance of a mission and the architect and just farm it. And then keep doing the mission over and over again and keeping their characters in the same group, and they're just letting their level 49 or whatever character do the farming and rapidly level it up. And they never actually play the low level that character at the low levels, right? They're into invention enhancements before they ever play them individually. I don't know if they get them all the way to 50 or just get them into like the 30s and then start playing them. And my guess is some players do each, but yeah, they don't even experience, nor do they want to experience, the low-level game. And on the other hand, I always want to experience the low-level game, and I prefer it. I actually like it a lot. I'm never going to find this thing, am I? Here we go. So why is it? Why do so many players eschew is that the right word? The low-level game, and particularly they don't like first level in most role-playing games. I know in Champions, my best friend was always arguing not to start at 200 or 250 points. Originally, Champions started at 100 plus 100 points. Then they changed it to 100 plus 150, which is kind of weird because I always thought it was sort of weird because it all it did was allow you to get more disadvantages. It didn't actually start you with a greater base level of points. Oh, and I forgot to increase the difficulty. Well, we'll level up and then we'll do that. Because I think we're going to get Chain Lightning, we'll get some AoE, and maybe we will try to do +1 group and see, if we'll do it as a two-man team, right, more enemies per spawn, and we'll see how it goes with this character. I have the feeling this is not the right character to do it on because he doesn't have a lot of AoEs, but we'll try. Anyway, so, I mean, the simple answer, why would you, so we're talking about Champions, it used to be that you could have 100 points plus however many, at least 100 points of disadvantages, but however many you wanted. And the way it worked is if you took more than 2 of the same disadvantage, they got progressively worth less. So a 20-point disadvantage say psychological limitation, code against killing, 20 points. Psychological limitation, protective of innocent, 20 points. The third one you take, psychological limitation, overconfident, technically worth 20 points, but you only get 10 points for it. And so it sort of diminishing returns. So they didn't really have an upper limit on disadvantages, but in practice, it was very hard to get more than about 140 to 150 total points. What they did in 4th edition was, instead of limiting the points, they said you can't take more than 50 points from any one type of disadvantage, so psychological limitations or what have you. And then you're going to start with 100 points base and 150 points of disadvantages. And they expected you to do that. And then they did say you could do something different, and they suggested, 150 points base plus 225 points of disadvantages, which starts at 375. But believe me, guys, it is almost impossible to get 375 points of disadvantages. My best friend always wanted to do 150 plus 150, just so you could start at 300 points. He never wanted to start at 250. He didn't like starting at 200 in 2nd edition. And then when we got to 4th edition and you could start at 250, I thought, oh, this will pacify him, right? He was starting at his 250, which is he always started in the mid to upper 200s in 2nd edition. And nope, now I want to start at 300 or 325 or whatever. So, yeah, there's a tendency of players to not want to start at the lower levels, at the base level, whatever the lowest level is. And where is the glowy? There it is. So why is that? I mean, the easy answer is, well, players want to be more powerful. I think that's overly simplistic. I think that it comes from playing the game enough that you've experienced the higher level play enough that once you've played a character that has all SOs on it, playing one that only has trainers on it seems really weak, right? The character seems very weak. It seems like it can't do much, because it can't do much compared to somebody with single origins on it. And after you play with a character with all sets, then you don't want to play a character without sets, because again, it's much more powerful and you get used to that. And in D&D, right, when are you playing a first level character? The first time you play one is the first time you played D&D, and your first level character seems like he can do quite a lot, because they can. Even in AD&D, you can do some pretty cool stuff, even at first level. Cast sleep spell, pick locks, not a high probability, but you can do it. Sneak around, backstab, cast a healing spell, cast a magic missile spell, that kind of stuff. Right? That's all pretty cool stuff. And when you're first level, it seems pretty awesome. Right? I remember being first level and doing that stuff seemed pretty darn cool. And my character felt like a wizard, and my halfling thief felt like a thief. Whatever. So then when else, after the very first time you play the game at first level, when else do you play the game at first level? Well, it's going to be after you finish your last campaign, or after your existing character died, who's probably, unless you died in the first session, not first level, right? So every time after the very first time you play a game, when you're first level, it is immediately following when you were a higher level, right? If it's when a campaign ended and you were 20th level, well, last week you were 20th level and now you're first level again. And it feels weak, right? Because you're not only have you played higher level characters, but you just played a higher level character. When I start first level characters on COH, it's pretty much always right after getting to level 50, right? So I go from a level 50 character with SOs or maybe even sets fully slotted to a character who has one primary, one secondary, and no slots and no enhancements, right? And so that feels, because it is, an awful lot weaker. I can never get out of this stupid forest. I hate it so much. I hate that they closed the canopy. I know it's been closed all of live, but I still hate it. Um, so yeah, I think part of it is the comparison, right? That in comparison to the games, in comparison to the level, the power level that you had right before you played level 1, it is so much weaker. It's not like you were level 2 and now you're playing level 1 most of the time, unless your level 2 character got killed last week. It's not like you're playing level 3 and now you're playing level 1. No, you were playing level 9 or 11 or 17 and now you're playing level 1. Or in COH, I got myself to level 50 and now I'm playing level 1. And a lot of players, well, they don't really like the feel of having their character be that much weaker. They're spoiled, essentially, not in a super negative way, but they're kind of spoiled by the high level play and all the fancy things your level 50 COH or your level 20 D&D character could do, or your 450 point champions character with 175 experience plus etc. So all those things that those characters can do, well, you can't do that much. Your champions character at the end, when you went to retire them, was doing 14d6 and had 7 multi-power slots and had a 28 PDED. And now your character has 2 or 3 multi-power slots, is doing 9d6 and has like 17 PDED. So it is a lot weaker. Let's see. So this is an AoE, right? Chain. And this is a location. 46 ticks of cold. But that's enemies. This is a location, but how big is it? Okay. Outside 10 feet, within 35-foot radius, within 40 foot. Okay, so pretty good radius. So, all right, we're going to go chain lightning because I've wanted this all along. Because it just sounds cool. And we need to get an accuracy on it, but we're not going to do that right now because in one level we will level up to 27, and then we can start getting IOs. So I'm not going to bother with that. We're just going to leave it bare for now. I know that's not great. If I find an accuracy, I will put it on. But otherwise, we're going to wait till we get to level 27, and then we'll see what IOs we have in the base that we can put on it. Okay. So the other thing we have to do is change the mission difficulty. So we're going to go to team size 2, and let's just see how it plays. All right, so we're going to Atlas Park. Do that through the base. So now, why do I like... I played high-level D&D and Champions and Rollmaster and stuff. Why do I like first level? I played level 50 Champion City of Heroes. But one of my favorite things to do in the game is make up a new player and play the tutorial. And be first and second level, third level, be weak. Where I only have a couple of powers. And yeah, you don't have your completed attack chain yet. Why am I stuck? You don't have your completed attack chain yet, and you don't have your endurance reducers on it yet, and, you know, but I enjoy it. I like the simplicity of it. The character can only do 2 or 3 things in game, which means that solving problems takes thought. You have to, as I've often said, use your noggin, and I like having to use my noggin. The other thing is that in all these games, the challenge scales. So in City of Heroes, it takes you, assuming you're enhancing powers, because you have to enhance them, the game assumes that, assuming you're getting up through SOs, you're doing trainers to 15th level and DOs to 25th level and then SOs after that, and you're slotting reasonably and putting the right enhancements on your powers that give you damage and accuracy. Basically, it takes 3 shots to take out, at least as a scrapper, it takes 3 shots to take out a minion at first level and at 50th level. What the minions are and the total number of damage you're doing changes, but not how many attacks it takes to knock something out. Now, when we get to things like, let's see how chain lightning works. Oh, look at that! That is cool. When we get to things like sets, you can knock enemies out way faster than that you have um, uh, because you have extra damage coming in from the sets, and you're more accurate and everything else. But when we're talking about just using SOs and stuff, yeah, it's about 3 blows to take out an enemy minion of just about any faction unless they have vulnerability or resistance to you at every level. And so the reality is that it's not really any easier or any harder. You have more options at the higher levels, which is nice, but you can still succeed, and you can succeed with roughly the same difficulty. Same thing is true in Dungeons and Dragons, right? When you're fighting goblins, when you're level 1, you're fighting kobolds, maybe goblins, right? When you're level 10, you're fighting weak dragons like blue dragons and stuff. When you're level 20, you're fighting orcus, right? So it's like, yeah, the goblins would not be able to beat you at this level the way they could threaten you at first level, but you don't fight goblins at 20th level because it would be boring to do. And so realistically, oh, I see. This guy is going to have a problem with endurance if we keep it like this. We may have to go to the +1 instead. I don't know if that actually helps because we have to do more damage to them, like if they're +1. So do some AoEs. Awesome. That chain lightning's really cool. So, yeah, we're having endurance problems, unfortunately. Do I hear a glowy? Thought I heard a glowy. So yeah, I like when you have to use your noggin, and I feel like at the higher levels you don't have to do that as much because the game gives you powers and abilities that essentially replace the thinking, right? And so you don't beat the villains any faster. It still takes you 4 or 5 rounds in a battle of D&D, whether you're fighting kobolds at first level or fighting really powerful monsters at like dragons and stuff at 15th level. The total dice you roll, right? Like champions, same thing. You're rolling bigger dice or more dice, right? So instead of rolling 9 dice, you're rolling 15 dice. But the villains have higher defense, so you need that 15 dice just to get through the extra defense that the villains have, right? Because I had to rebalance it so that you wouldn't just walk all over them, and the battle wouldn't be boring. So, I don't know, to me, it seems like you're almost like spinning your wheels. You're making the numbers bigger without getting, you're getting sort of, what's the word? Objectively more powerful, but relatively not any more powerful. Right? It sort of reminds me of, I see this now that I've been investigating, war games and stuff. You see this in war games. World War II, there are sort of 3 periods, right? Early war, mid-war, and late war. Early war is like Poland through kind of the end of 1941. And then mid-war is like 42, 43 till roughly Normandy, and then Normandy till the end of the war is late war, right? And we're talking specifically the European theater of operations. And the technology changed, right? There are tanks and artillery pieces that existed in 1945 at the end of the war that they didn't have the tech for early on. So the Germans went from the early Panzers, the Panzer 1s and 2s, to the later Panzers, like Panzer 4, 5, and 6, which are much more powerful, to eventually the Tiger, which was a really powerful tank, right? And so, when you're playing a World War II game, that guy's a lieutenant. Okay, I was wondering why he's orange. When you're playing a World War II game, you need to know what era you're in, and there are people who like to play late era because they want the more powerful, like the Pershing tanks that the Americans fielded in 1945 against the Tiger tanks that the Germans fielded. But a Pershing versus a Tiger is kind of like an early Sherman versus a Panzer III, right? Which is like one of the early French tanks from the Maginot Line against a Panzer I. I mean, relatively speaking, the clash is just about the same, right? And so you're not... Yeah, the Tiger is objectively more powerful, way more powerful than a Panzer I, but you're not going to fight a Panzer I with a Tiger. And you're not going to fight the early British and French tanks with a Tiger. Because in 1945, when the Tigers were out, the more advanced Shermans and the Pershings were out, along with the more advanced British tanks, right? And so the that gives you sort of parity, as it were. And especially in a game, because there wasn't actual parity in the war. One guy pointed this out. Yes, the Tigers were much better tanks. And in games, in video games, it's like, yay, they're great because you only get a few tanks on the battlefield, and if one of them's a Tiger, you're going to own, right? So players love Tigers. But he said if you were really simulating the war, right, it took the Germans as much time, effort, etc., to build one Tiger tank as it took the Americans to build like a dozen Shermans. So yes, one Tiger is going to own one Sherman, but one Tiger didn't fight one Sherman. There were 12 of them coming at him, and you might be able to take 3 or 4 of them out, but they're going to get you, right? The Americans won with overwhelming force, and the Russians, by the way, did a lot of the same thing on the Eastern Front. The Russians lost, I think, a couple of million men in World War II, but they just swarmed the British, and they outnumbered them so much that, I'm sorry, the Germans, and they outnumbered the Germans so much that the Germans couldn't win, even though they had superior training, superior firepower, superior like weaponry, and better training and tech, right? The numbers were on the American, British, and Russian side. The Germans were basically trying to 1v-N the world, right? And you can't do that. And so, so in a game where you're not worrying about all of that stuff, it's just you're just saying, I want the best tank. Let's get Tigers, right? And it's pretty cool, and they're really good tanks. But also, what usually happens in these scenarios, because you can't have a dozen Shermans on the battlefield, you won't be able to play the game. It's too many. Is they give the American player a Pershing tank, and it's statistically pretty similar. Parity, right? You make it so that the die rolls are going to determine who wins the fight, and it's pretty even. You're going to roll a 3 or 4 or better on D6 or something like that. And, you know, maybe the Tigers have better penetration but not quite as strong armor, and the Pershings have not quite as good penetration but stronger armor. And when you match it up, right, it's a 5 penetration versus 5 armor and a 4 penetration versus 4 armor. And guess what? You need an 11 or less on 3d6 to do both. I'm just making that up, right? Same thing with champions, all right? You start out champions 7 and 8 OCV, DCV, right? Offensive combat value. And the enemies have the same, and you have 11 or less to hit. When you're like really powerful and you're a 500 point character, you have a 12 OCV DCV, and guess what? The enemies have 12 OCV DCV, and you have an 11 or less to hit. And so to me, it's like, okay, having huge numbers, all that's doing, like I said this to my best friend, all it's doing when you go from 14d6, 9d6 to 14d6 is, I've got to roll more dice and add more numbers. It just slows the game down. It doesn't actually make your character, relatively speaking, any more powerful. And if you're talking about war games, right, if the Pershing tanks and the Tiger tanks get to roll more attack dice, but they have bigger damage, or bigger defense and damage resistance, then all you're doing is rolling more dice and adding more numbers, right? And so, I mean, maybe you aesthetically like a Pershing tank better than a Sherman, okay. But it's not actually doing anything for you because relatively speaking, it's all pretty much the same. So you're just, I think people fall in love with the big numbers. The other thing is you do get more options. We can see that at this level I have a lot more things to click on, and by 50th level, all of these little sockets will be pretty much full, and probably all of these, right? And nearly so, right? And so that, players like to have more options to click on, and that's true. That's fine. But not this thing, these options are completely unrelated to whether I'm using my brain, my noggin, to do stuff, right? And oftentimes, when you have enough of these options with your character, you don't need to think, because the power will do it for you. The superpower just does it for me, and I don't have to worry about it. Think about my scrappers and stalkers, right? And probably this character too, right? Think about characters at low level against Vajaloks, right? You're 7th level, and you're fighting Vajaloks, and you have almost no defensive toggles. You have almost no abilities. What few abilities you do have, like an accuracy trainer or DO on them, and no damage, because you don't have enough slots, right? And so you really can't do much to them. And what do you have to do? You have to figure out how to fight the Vajaloks without dying. And they even, in missions that are not +1 enemies, right? We're doing this as if we're a party of 2 of our level, right? Even a +0 mission with +0 group size, right? Right here, times 1 players. Wow, look at this spawn. Excellent. I like this. We get some AoE in here. Even then, the Vajalok spawns at ×1 are oftentimes extremely large compared. They're like this, and a lot of times they're yellow, so they're +1 to you, and they're very tough. And if you don't do some thinking, you're going to be in some trouble. You don't have as many inspiration slots, so you can't click these little inspirations when you feel like you're getting into some trouble, like I'm doing now because I'm way over aggroed. You don't have inspiration slots. You don't have enhancement slots, right? And so you have to think. Like what I'm just doing here, where I just blindly went in and started attacking, was pretty stupid. I didn't quite realize how big this spawn was, but that's okay. We're fine. Right? But you can't, if I tried to do this at 3rd level, I would just get owned. Right? I would be dead. I would have been dead a long time ago. Or I'd have had to run away. Because there are oranges in this spawn, which I didn't think about. So what do you have to do at 7th level against all these Vajaloks in a big spawn like this? You have to think. So there are ways to do it. My way of doing it is the pull. Right? You hit one guy, boom, and you back up. And you go around the corner. And you force him to come to you. Right? And then you use all your powers on that one guy. And you take him out nice and easy. Right? And the other guys didn't notice. And you're good. Right? Now this guy didn't notice this guy was not with, well, I guess he was with this guy, but this guy was just coming back because I had damaged him. Right? So here's the spawn. So the white guy I got just there was part of the old spawn. So here's a new spawn. Let's do a pull. Right? Now he and 1 or 2 of his buddies will come to me maybe. Right? I'm just showing you how this works. So now, if I'm a low-level character, the way I handle a big spawn like this of Vajaloks is to do the pull. These guys are much smarter than the Vajaloks. The Vajaloks are programmed to be really stupid because they're corpses. They're animated corpses, and so you can just do this pull. Right? And so you have to learn how to use your brain when you don't have enough power options or enough abilities and you can't handle a big swarm coming at you like I just had happen to me, right? The only reason I was able to handle that is because I'm this level. I have way more inspiration spots. So I was able to put on some Lux and do some heals and everything else. I have all of these powers other than Chain Lightning pretty well enhanced, and this one does extra healing because of the enhancements, and it recharges faster because of the enhancements, and all the rest of it. And I have more attack powers. At low level, I just had these two, right? And or three, whatever. And so you're waiting for them to recharge. I was still using Brawl, right? And the thing is, like, I don't mind that because it forced me to think of my way out of a situation if there are a lot of Ojolocks or what have you. I like doing that. I like thinking about it and using my noggin. Is that guy a boss? He is. Okay. Let's do some extra damage. I'm gonna hit this guy actually. There we go. Knock him over. Take him out. Let's see if we can back this guy up into me here. Just want him to come into the storm. Come here. Oh, he doesn't want to. Alright, well. There we go. So yeah, so I like the low level game because I'm forced to think about what I'm doing much more. In the high level game, you're almost on autopilot, and I feel like that happens a lot to players in games like D&D and unfortunately Savage Worlds as well. And it's one of the reasons why if I run another Savage Worlds game, I don't know what my best friend's going to say because he doesn't like to be first level. He likes having all the options, right? His preference would be for his spell list to include every spell in the game. And like I don't understand that because to me there's nothing thematic about that, right? Like every spell in the game means you're just a generic, right? It's like being in Champions and having that quote-unquote cosmic power pool, which is a variable power pool that can be like it's a 100-point variable power pool or whatever that can just be any powers in the game. There's no theme behind that, right? And so I don't actually like that. I prefer a much more restricted character concept that has a theme to it. And anyway, so I don't know what he's going to say about it, and I don't know if he's going to accept it, and I suspect he might not. But if I run Savage Worlds, there will be no arcane backgrounds. And the reason is that it's the arcane backgrounds and the powers that I think make the characters start to feel unrecognizable and overpowered and give them too many options that make it so that they don't have to think as much. Like even doing that dramatic task, they ask, can we use spells? Like, can we cast spells? This dramatic task is supposed to be skills, right? It's a skill challenge, essentially. Now, you do have a spell skill, but my best friend was like, hey, can I cast... We've talked about this before. Can I cast... He said, I don't remember what's the rule. Can I cast boost trait, right? And boost my notice or whatever it is with the spell, sort of outside of the auspices of the dramatic task. And I have ruled, no, you cannot do that, because the dramatic task may take minutes, and boost only lasts a few rounds. So what I have told them is, once per dramatic task, each of the spellcasters, of which there are 3, too many, each of the spellcasters, once per dramatic task, can use their spellcasting roll as a skill roll, and just spend 1 power point. And we assume they cast some sort of a spell that assisted them in doing this, and they describe how they do it. And the Blessed did that and used faith to cast a spell for, like, said I'm going to cast divination or whatever, and then described what they were doing. So you're not actually mechanically casting divination, you're just using it as part of the skill challenge, the dramatic task, right? But if you think about it, we have 3, and all 3 of them in the first 2 rounds of this 3-round dramatic task used their spells instead of an actual skill to do something skill-based, right? And so, yes, the spell is cast with a skill, but they're using the spell. Like, I'm going to cast divination and ask the spirits to solve this problem for me, right? They've cast divination like 5 or 6 times in this campaign. Whenever they can't figure something out, they just ask the spirits to figure it out for them. And I'm pretty vague with it because the spirits can only give like yes or no answers, and they get 5 questions. And so I give them 5 questions because it lasts 5 rounds, I think. And so I said, okay, we're going to assume 1 question per round because, I'm not going to set a timer on it. But yeah, I mean, they wanted to find out more about this knife. Instead of investigating it in the normal way, they said, let's do object reading on it and see what it remembers, right? And so that's like object divination. So now basically we had 2 attempts at the equivalent of divination on Saturday, and both of them were to get answers when the players couldn't figure it out themselves. Now, I don't mind they did make some effort to figure it out themselves before they started trying to do divinations and stuff. But at low levels, you literally can't do that, and you have to figure it out yourself. I also just like the new car smell of a new character. I like when they don't have a lot of options, they don't have a lot of miles on them, and you kind of get to see. I don't know where this character. What did I do? Oh. I don't know where this character is going to go yet, right? And so I enjoy discovering that, right? So at first level, or at 200 points with a champion's character, I'm discovering this character, right? And I'm going to slowly, gradually learn about him as I go, right? So I didn't know exactly what powers I was going to need. I didn't know what powers I was going to take. I didn't know how I was going to slot them for sure. I was just, I just sort of figured it out as I've gone along. And I've had a lot of fun with that discovery. And that to me is a big chunk of the game. And at first level, everything is wide open. I have no idea what this character is going to be like and how they're going to develop. And I'm curious to find that out. And I feel like, 10th level, it's almost like spoilers. All right, I already know how this character is going to turn out. So it's not as interesting to me. So that's one of the reasons I really like low-level characters. I think we're doing okay, other than some endurance issues. We're doing okay doing this with ×2 players. Alright, so we need to get the last parts, and that should be here. So yeah, I mean, war games, I actually kind of like early war and mid-war better than late war. In World War II, right? And the reason is that, again, they started having like rockets and stuff in the late war, and well, that makes everything too powerful. The one game I'm looking at, which is I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm pretty sure I have earlier episodes where I said there's no way I'm going to do this, but now I'm thinking about doing it because it looks like fun. I'm looking at into some miniatures war games, and one of them is called Flames of War, and they're just putting out the kind of early war stuff, and they put out all the late and mid-war stuff years ago, and now I guess they're starting on the early war. And so they have a set for Dunkirk and a set for the Maginot Line, and you got the French and the British and the Germans. And one of the things that this one guy who was like reviewing it said is, in these packs, you're going to get a higher concentration of infantry for your force, right? So when you go to field of force, it has to be worth a certain number of points to put it on the table, 100 points, let's say. And say an infantry squad is worth 5 points, I don't know the numbers, and a tank is worth 10, and a artillery piece is worth 12, or whatever. And so 100-point force in early war is going to be like 65 points of soldiers and 35 points of mechanic stuff, like mechanized, like tanks, trucks, etc., artillery pieces. Mid-war, it's going to be maybe 50-50, and late war, it's going to be like 30 troops and 70 mech, right? And so, well, the tanks are way more powerful, and the troops have to be, you have to be more careful with your troops against the tanks. And also, they hadn't perfected the better anti-tank weapons. Like the early war, they have anti-tank rifles that are fairly weak in old school tactical. They have a 1 armor penetration. That's as weak as you can be and still have armor penetration, right? And most of the armor, unless you're shooting something in the back, is 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's like you're operating at -2 or -3 or more, which is very low odds of doing any damage. And we've maxed out on salvage again. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Do we get any? We did not. I was wondering if we got any enhancements for accuracy. As you get into the later war, you get the Panzerschrecks, Panzerfaust, and bazookas, and a lot more troops are carrying them around. So in late war, your infantry can blow up tanks. But in early war, they can't, right? So you have more infantry, and they're pretty vulnerable to the tanks. They kind of can't do much to the tanks, right? You need another tank to fight the tanks. And you don't have a lot of tanks because it's early war. And the Germans had some, but a lot of the other countries really didn't have that many. And all the mechanized stuff, that came in later in the war. And so that makes it much more complicated to deal with. The tanks are like these god weapons coming onto the field, and each side only has like 3 of them. And you have to figure out, how do I take these tanks out with all these troops? And in one of the sets, I think it's Dunkirk, the one side has way more troops and fewer tanks than the other side. So this is a problem to solve. How are you going to beat the guys who have more armor with your little guys who don't have powerful Panzerfausts and bazookas to fight them with, right? They just have these AT rifles, and maybe not many of those. Maybe not any, right? Or sometimes you have scenarios where there's 1 anti-tank gun, and you better protect that thing and try to use it against the enemy tank. And 1 tank, and the winner is going to be the guy who can either take out the anti-tank gun before his tank gets hit, or take out the tank before his anti-tank gun gets hit. And that makes it much more interesting, rather than what happens in a late war game is often you just get these tanks slugging at each other. By the way, that happens in the game, the video game Company of Heroes, which is a great game, but I remember going through the scenarios of that, and when you get to like the Tigers, and the Tigers are a really hard problem to solve, and then when you get the Pershings, they can stand up against the Tigers. I'm like, I'm bored now, right? I like the early war better when you had weaker things that were still vulnerable to the troops, and you had weaker troops that were vulnerable to the tanks, and everybody was a little bit weaker, and you had to think more. You couldn't just throw explosions at the enemy. You couldn't just throw anti-tank rounds at the enemy because you didn't have them, right? And so it made it much harder. Whoa, what's the story here? Why? Oh, it's a level 27 boss. I thought he was more powerful. No, it's just +1. We shouldn't be on a lot of +1s though here, because this is +0 times 2. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I feel like the I like the weaker stuff, because the weaker stuff makes you have to think and strategize and be tactically smart. And in the later game, you can just slug it out, right? To me, a tank versus tank, 5 tank versus 5 tank slug out is not as interesting as when there's 1 tank. This guy's going to be tough. When there's 1 tank against 1 tank, and then a bunch of infantry, and if the infantry aren't careful, they're going to be vulnerable to that tank, and if the tank's not careful, the infantry could sneak up on him and throw a satchel charge on him, right? And it's just, I think that makes it interesting. Man, these guys are tough. Well, at +1 also. And I'm just not doing enough damage to them because I don't have enough slots yet. But it's definitely more of a challenge on this ×2 than it was on ×1, where I was just like not challenged at all. Yikes. Mostly this is an endurance issue. So the sort of early war is like first level, and mid war is like 8th level, and late war is like 15th level in a World War II game. And yeah, I find that I'm kind of glad if I get into Flames of War that it is, the cycle is they've gone back to the early war and they're doing a bunch of that, because I find that more interesting. And I find it more interesting because it's like first level. You have weaker armored vehicles that aren't that strong, and you have weaker anti-tank that's not that strong, and it just makes it more interesting, at least to me. Same thing with the low-level game. This guy against a bunch of whites and the occasional red, at 50th level, it's not going to be a problem at all, but at this level, I still have to think and husband my resources, right? The endurance won't be as much of a problem in the future because we'll have um, all of these things endurance reduced, and we'll have enhancement sets that'll probably help with endurance as well, and so forth. But for right now, it's killing me, and the reason it's killing me is because I have to hit him over and over and over again, because I don't have damage enhancers on my powers yet, because I'm low level, and you just can't yet, right? I mean, even if I wanted to put them on, we don't have the slots, right? We're also suffering from having yellow enhancements. Oh, wow, we're fighting Ubermen in here? Oh, man. I would go out and get more inspirations, because we're in a bit, we don't have a lot. But I don't know where Ubermen is, and I'm needing inspirations just to fight some of the orange lieutenants in here, so I don't think it's worth it, because we probably have to go back out anyway. So yeah, let me know what you think, guys. The do you like the puzzle of doing the weaker game, or do you prefer the harder game? Or do you prefer the more powerful game? Right? Do you like it harder when your character's weaker? And I mean, the thing is, and the new girl said this. She said, she felt like after about 6th level, it never felt like they could die. At first level, yeah, you could be in death saves. D&D, they made it actually rather hard for you to die. You can go into death saves, but it takes several rounds unless you crit fail it, which is only a 5% chance. Odds aren't high, and somebody can force a healing potion down your throat or cast a healing spell on you, and it immediately stabilizes you, right? So there's the very high probability is you're going to be stabilized. But even there, I think a couple people went into death saves at like first, second level, and I don't think in first level. I think it's second level the cleric went into death saves, and I think one or two other characters went into death saves before about 5th or 6th level. But then after that, it was very rare. Nobody even went into death saves, and certainly nobody died. Oh, this guy saw me here. And my storm's attacking them, which is kind of cool. Take some lightning, boys. Yeah, this is definitely more of a challenge. You can see that, especially when you got the lieutenants that turn into those. Oh, did you see that? Like 3 of them got hit with that lightning. Quite nice. See if we can weaken his defense a little bit. Nice. I love those lightning bolts from the sky. They're so awesome. Still running out of endo. there's guys down here too. Let's see if we can knock this guy down. Let's make it rain on him. The main reason I put a storm down here is just in case he wolfs up. Because some of them have been and some of them haven't been. So this one didn't. We're getting some inspirations back. We're still not in any shape to face Ubelman. Don't know where he's going to be. I don't remember this mission well enough to know the answer to that. One of the reasons I'm having endo problems is, as you can see, with a lot of these guys, I end up with just a sliver of health left on them. And that's because I don't have the damage enhancers, because if I had them, they'd be out. So it's forcing me to do more blows, and then the wolves, of course, are also forcing me to do more blows, and that's what's eating up my endurance. Awesome. Well, these guys, I think, do drop tech, so we may find an accuracy tech enhancer as we go. Wow, this is just the first level of this, I almost said dungeon, of this mission, of this base. Just to make sure. Okay, that's just a dead end. Did I see a guy over here? No. Okay. This isn't actually a defeat all. I don't think. But man, look at this, half a level already. So that's one of the things. The missions take longer, but you do get a lot more XP because you're fighting more enemies. And notice I am staying on the ground to keep that grounded bonus. Because that helps in Mez defense. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, because most guys look down but not up in this game, is come up here and fight the guys up here first. These guys might look up. These guys here, they might see me. Oh, and there's a hostage. Oh yeah, they're definitely going to see me now because it hit them. Let's bring the storm back further because they just ran up to me. It's definitely hard not to get swarmed. We don't have good... We can do some knockdown, you can see it, but not enough. And it does get us swarmed. And I can't... And I feel like I don't want to run too far because I want to keep them in the storm. I still haven't got the alchemy of this character down quite right, I think. So that hostage was taken care of. Yeah, so as I said a little bit earlier, I had sworn to myself I was not going to get sucked into doing like miniatures that I'm going to stick with boards and counters and games that come with those things done. No homebrewing anything, no making anything, no painting, no any of that. I figured my days of painting were well behind me. I did a lot of it with D&D miniatures. I did a lot of it with the model railroad that I created. It's still sitting behind me on a table, 2x6 in N scale, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But I thought, I'm not going to do that again. And then one of the things that most made me interested in it is that in the board games, you're pretty much limited to whatever environment they give you for a scenario. And so I have this random war game generator book. Right, this is for soloing. The guy who wrote it has a bunch of random tables so you can generate your own random scenarios, and it's balanced and everything. It's pretty cool. And I have some thoughts on how I want to use that, but I think it will be easier to do with miniatures because you're working on a table with a bunch of movable terrain instead of having to have some sort of a hex map. You don't need hexagons because you're measuring by inches, and so or centimeters or whatever. And so I feel like it's more flexible for kind of a custom set of scenarios. One of the things that I've always wanted to try is called a campaign game. They do this in Advanced Squad Leader, but the idea is you start with a company or a few companies or a battalion of men, and you keep the stats. And as the squads get damaged and take casualties, then you need to get reinforcements from your battalion. And if you are too unsuccessful, it's going to become harder and harder to beat the scenarios because your force is getting depleted. And if you're successful, then your force will get reinforcements and your force will survive. And so this is a way of linking scenarios. And one way you can do it is to take the existing scenarios, like Old School Tactical gives you multiple scenarios in 1941 and early 1942 in their first volume on the Eastern Front. And so you could just do them by date and link them that way. But I actually would rather custom generate them. And okay, here we go with this boss. And so so there's another one of the I've been looking up the rules for the campaign games. Like, it drives me nuts. They exist, but I can't find them. Like, I know there are pictures of them. There's a video of it on the internet, but they don't show the text in detail because it violates copyright and stuff. And you can't buy it like secondhand, even for a lot of money. The few people who have it aren't selling, and so that's pretty frustrating. And so I was looking up campaign rules, and there was this other company that does miniatures wargaming that came up with a really cool system that I think I want to use. And I'm going to combine it with this solo wargaming, World War II wargaming solo book. So I want to use that, but but in order to do that, I'm going to have to sort of generate custom scenarios, and most of the games other than ASL, there's just not enough map boards and stuff to do that. But with a miniatures game, like I said, you can just make up whatever terrain you want. And so, man, these guys are tough. Well, they are red, after all. So yeah, that's what's got me sort of thinking about maybe doing it. Right, because what I want to do is have a company, you know, the 4077th, let's say, and or a set of companies, I don't know, maybe a battalion, and just track them over time and give them a bunch of objectives and follow the campaign process. And rather than just having these disconnected scenarios, actually have scenarios where there's a consequence later on. And I don't know. I think that would be really cool and fun to do. Well, I hope Uberman's not in here because we don't have enough inspirations, and I'll have to go out and get more. What I've been hoping is to collect inspirations as we go, but the problem is this has been tough enough that I have not been able to hoard them because they keep putting me up against bosses. This is a rough. This is a pretty rough mission. And now I know he's going to turn back into a wolf, so I got to start using extra damage as well. Oh, he didn't. So I wasted those. I assumed he would. Well, there's another one, so we can use it on him. But yeah, it's been many, many years since I've painted minis. I don't know how I'm going to do with 15mm minis. They're pretty small. It's been a long time since I glued plastic models together. Always loved doing that. I always loved making models. It was one of my favorite things when I was a kid. I got an aircraft carrier, and that I think was one of the first I had other models. I think I'd done some planes and some cars. I loved making model kits. And then I got really interested in naval ships, and I got the, I believe it was USS Enterprise aircraft carrier from the 70s, and I remember making that, and it was the first one I painted. Maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. I remember painting it, putting decals on it. It was really cool. I wasn't great at it. It was a little sloppy. I do remember being sort of disappointed. I had an uncle, my Uncle John. He used to love model airplanes, and he would make the ones that flew. This is back in like the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. They would have little motors on them, and they'd made them out of balsa wood, and he got these model kits. And up in our attic, we had this little room that was kind of like it had been fixed up. The attic was pretty nasty, but this side room had been sort of plastered and fixed up, and um, it was like a little office kind of. And there were all these airplane pictures hanging on the walls. And my mother told me, "Oh, this is where your Uncle John, her brother, used to come up here, and he would make his models." I don't know how he could stand it because it was either freezing cold or boiling hot up there, in summer or winter. My guess is he just did it in like spring and fall. I don't know, but I remember we were up there at one point, and I mentioned the pictures. I said, "These are really cool pictures." He said, "He didn't. These aren't just pictures. Those are pictures from the box covers." I didn't think about it, right? That each one of those was a model he made. And she said it was so sad because he would take them. They would be these meets in the park, and he would take them to the park, and he would fly the planes, and he would come back with them all smashed. Oh boy, a boss with no lucks. That's going to be rough. Try to do a little more damage. Hang on. Oh. So I have a new Garmin fitness watch or whatever. Oh, it's driving me nuts. 9:30 at night. I got to find a way to turn it off, but I'm always in the middle of something when it does this. It's not I'm not even wearing it. It's sitting on the desk and it buzzed, and I'm like, am I getting a phone call or something, cuz it'll buzz when I get a phone call. And no, it's just buzzing me to tell me you don't have any alarm set. Why are you giving me an alarm to tell me I don't have any alarm set? Oh, very annoying. So there's, I'm sure, a way to turn it off, but it's new and I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Almost got me killed, you stupid watch, because I was looking at my phone to see why is my phone buzzing at 9:30 at night. My concern is like, is it my sister calling to tell me there's a problem with the kids, or my nephews or something? Because I don't really get calls at night, late at night like that. Yes, to me 9:30 is late. Oh boy. Okay, what's going on here? This is a patrol, I guess. So anyway, my my Uncle John, when I finished making my aircraft carrier, he was visiting us, and my mom said, "Why don't you show your Uncle John what you made?" And I showed it to him, and whereas all the other adults had said, "Oh, it's great," he was a perfectionist, and he was like, "Well, the lines on this are pretty squiggly," and he said you could, take a piece of tape, and he explained how to use the tape, the masking tape, to like do the straight lines, and you got a little bit of this paint on that color here. It doesn't look, So he kind of like, I was a little hurt, and then I realized, well, he's right. It was a little sloppy, and he was just trying to tell me how to be a better modeler, because if you're doing scale models, you want it to look right, right? Now, in the kind of miniatures that you have in the 15 millimeter scale are so small that you're not going to be that perfect. But I had that aircraft carrier. Then I think it was a Battleship New Jersey. And I wanted to have an entire fleet, like all the major denominations of ships. So I got a heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, a destroyer. And I think all I had left was a submarine that I wanted. And I never did get one because I kind of stopped making the models. I sort of ran out of space in my room to store them, because I had them on the shelf and stuff, and I didn't have any more shelf space. I feel like my mother talked about getting me one, and I said, never mind, I don't want to do them anymore, or whatever. And the next time I messed around with, there's Uberman. Okay, we got to pull this guy out. The next time I messed around with plastic model kits and stuff was when I was doing model trains years later. So I did model kits, I guess, through high school, and then stopped, and that would have been like the late 80s. And then the next time I tried my hand at plastic model kits, it was like 2010. After doing some model train work, I actually did make a was it a P-51? I can't remember. I've got a plane um, in one of my room, when my guest bedroom. It's just still sitting there. I'm really ticked off too, because I did it. It looks fine. It doesn't. I don't do the like the stressing and making it look aged and battle damage and stuff. I just, if it's green, I just paint it green. Right. I'm not going to do all of that. It was nice and neat and everything, and I had it all right and ready to go. And I put the decals on it. And darn if I wasn't watching which way I had the plane when I put the stupid decal on, and the American star on the wing is upside down. So it's facing the top point is facing backwards toward the tail instead of forwards towards the nose. I can't, it's just a little detail. Most people wouldn't notice it. I can't unsee it now. It irritates me. But once you put a decal on, there's really nothing you can do about it unless you want to potentially do a lot of damage to the model. So what I'm doing here, if I have to go out, I'll go out. But what I'm doing here is I'm trying to take these other guys out without aggroing Ubelman and his buddies, and see if I can get some inspirations that I need. There are a few of these guys here. It's possible that I might. If not, we got to have a couple lucks. If not, I'm going to go out and get them. Because with him being purple and with us on ×2 enemies, it's going to be almost impossible to defeat him without some lucks. And this boss is going to make it hard too, because I can't use inspirations on this boss. If I do, then that defeats the whole purpose of doing this, which is to try and see if we can get some inspirations to use against Ubi. I gotta kind of slow the pace down because I'm trying to save on endurance. I don't want to use the endurance inspirations because, again, we're going to need them probably against Ubelman. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to use these. There's nothing I can do about it. The bosses are just too tough because he's going to come out as a werewolf now. I think. Oh no, he didn't. That's the second time I thought it was going to happen. Alright guys, I'm going to pause it here. I will go get some inspirations and I will bring you back. Okay folks, we're back. I did not realize it had been over an hour. He is a +1 EB. I don't know if we're going to be able to win this. I got a bunch of sturdies rather than Lux because the Lux only add 12%. We have very little defense. We have mostly resistance, so I think I'm going to try to crank that. And we'll just have to hope. And I'm going to try to pick on the other guys first. The logic being that if they kill me, then at least when I come back to him, I only have him to deal with and not all the rest of these guys. Man, they're already pounding me. And the real problem is going to be endurance. Let's throw one more of these on. We're now at the 75% cap. Make sure it keeps raining on them. We can just get this guy out at least. It's just me against Ubelman after this. There we go. Alright, Ubel. Me and you, buddy. Let's go. If I keep him knocked down, I might be alright. Make sure it keeps raining on him. Oh, man. He's brutal. But we're doing okay. We're getting some crits in. Oh, man. My last heal. Oh, close. We're close. Yeah, I don't think I can get him. If this had been just a ×0, we'd probably be okay. Oh wait, maybe we get him. Yeah, we got him! We got him, guys! Story arc complete. Not too shabby. Good job for this character. +1, a purple elite boss at level 27. On ×2 with all those extra buddies helping him. And we're pretty darn close to level 27, which we will do next time. Until then, guys, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.